Have you ever wondered what lurks behind the smile of your closest friend? The one you've known for years, shared secrets with, laughed until dawn. What if that familiar face was just a mask, hiding something so twisted it could unravel your entire world? Emily grew up in a quiet suburb of Seattle, where the rain never stops and the fog clings to the streets like a living thing. She and her 4 best friends, let's call them Sarah, Jake, Mia, and Chris, had been inseparable since middle school. They called themselves the Fab Five, a cheesy nickname that stuck through high school crushes, college applications, and even into their early 20s when life started pulling them in different directions. But no matter what, they made time for each other weekend. Hikes in the misty forests, late-night bonfires on the beach, or just crashing at someone's apartment with pizza and horror movies. Sarah was the heart of the group, the one who organized everything, remembered birthdays, and always had that infectious laugh that could cut through the gloomiest day. Emily told me it all started subtly. About a year ago, right after Sarah got back from a solo trip to Europe. Sarah had always been the adventurous one, saving up for months to backpack through old cities and forgotten ruins. When she returned, she seemed off. Not in a big way. At first, just little things that Emily brushed off as jet lag, or maybe the exhaustion of travel. Sarah's eyes would linger a bit too long on nothing, staring into space as if listening to a voice only she could hear. Her laugh sounded the same, but sometimes it came at the wrong moments, like during a serious conversation about Jake's job loss. And then there were the nights when they'd all hang out, and Sarah would excuse herself early, claiming a headache, only to text the group hours later with some cryptic message like, "The shadows are whispering again. Sweet dreams." The group chalked it up to Sarah being dramatic. She'd always had a flair for the theatrical, quoting old poetry or spinning ghost stories around the campfire. But Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. One evening, during a rainy game night at Maya's place, Sarah arrived late, her coat dripping water onto the floor. She hugged everyone as usual, but when she got to Emily, her grip tightened just a fraction too much, her nails digging in like she was holding on for dear life. "Missed you," Sarah murmured, her breath cold against Emily's ear. The rest of the night passed normally. They played board games, argued over rules, and devoured takeout. But as the hours ticked by, Emily noticed Sarah watching her more than the others, her gaze sharp and unblinking, like a predator sizing up prey. Days turned into weeks, and the oddities piled up. Jake mentioned Sarah had started collecting weird trinkets, old keys, rusted lockets, fragments of bone she claimed were from ancient sites in Romania. Maya laughed it off when Sarah gifted her a necklace with a pendant that looked suspiciously like a human tooth, saying it was for protection. Chris, the skeptic of the group, joked that Sarah was turning into a goth phase late in life. But Emily felt the unease growing, a knot in her stomach that tightened every time Sarah's name popped up on her phone. One night, alone in her apartment, Emily scrolled through old photos of the 5 of them: graduation, road trips, holidays. In the recent ones, Sarah's smile seemed forced, her eyes darker, as if the light had dimmed inside her. It was around this time that the dream started for Emily, at least. She'd wake up in a sweat, heart pounding, fragments of nightmares clinging to her mind. Sarah standing at the foot of her bed, whispering words in a language Emily didn't understand, her face melting into shadows. Emily tried to dismiss them as stress work was hectic, and the group's dynamics felt strained. But then came the incident at the cabin. The Fab Five had a tradition of renting a remote cabin in the Olympic National Forest every fall, disconnecting from the world for a weekend of hiking and storytelling. This year, the rain was relentless, turning the dirt roads to mud and the trees into looming sentinels. They arrived Friday evening, unloading groceries and firewood under a gray sky that promised storms. That first night, they built a fire in the stone hearth, the flames casting flickering shadows on the wooden walls. Chris strummed his guitar, Maya passed around hot cocoa spiked with whiskey, and Jake told dumb jokes that had everyone in stitches. Sarah seemed normal at first, joining in the laughter, but as the night wore on, she grew quiet, staring into the fire with an intensity that made Emily's skin crawl.
"What's on your mind, Sar?"
Emily asked, trying to sound casual. Sarah turned slowly, her eyes reflecting the flames like twin infernos. "Just thinking about secrets," she said softly. "How we all have them, buried deep. What if one day they crawl out?" The group exchanged uneasy glances, but Jake broke the tension with a laugh. "Okay. Edgar Allan Poe, save it for the ghost stories." They moved on, but Emily couldn't shake the chill. Later, as they settled into sleeping bags on the floor, the cabin had only 2 bedrooms, so they roughed it like old times. Emily lay awake, listening to the rain drum on the roof. Sometime after midnight, she heard soft footsteps padding across the creaky floorboards. Peeking through half-closed eyes, she saw Sarah rise from her spot, moving like a ghost toward the door. She slipped outside without a coat into the pouring rain. Emily's heart raced. Should she follow? Wake the others? Curiosity won out, mingled with concern. She grabbed her jacket and flashlight, creeping out after Sarah. The forest was a wall of darkness, the rain muffling sounds. But Emily caught glimpses of Sarah's white shirt ahead, weaving through the trees. Branches clawed at Emily's face. Mud sucked at her boots, but she pressed on, the beam of her flashlight cutting through the gloom. Sarah stopped in a small clearing, kneeling in the dirt, her hands digging furiously. Emily hid behind a tree, watching in horror as Sarah unearthed something, a small box, weathered and old. She opened it, pulling out what looked like a bundle of cloth, stained dark with what could have been blood. Whispers escaped Sarah's lips, low and rhythmic, not English. Emily's blood turned to ice. She backed away, snapping a twig underfoot. Sarah's head whipped around, her eyes locking onto Emily's hiding spot. For a moment, time froze, the rain, the wind, everything silent except Emily's pounding heart. Then Sarah smiled, a slow, unnatural curve of her lips that didn't reach her eyes. "Emily," she called, her voice carrying over the storm like it was right in her ear. "Come see what I've found." Emily ran, blind panic propelling her back to the cabin. She burst inside, slamming the door, waking the others with her gasps. "Sarah, she's out there, digging." The words tumbled out incoherently. Jake and Chris grabbed flashlights and went out to look, but returned soaked and empty-handed. "No sign of her," Chris said, frowning. "You sure you weren't dreaming?" But minutes later, Sarah returned, dripping wet, but acting as if nothing happened. "Couldn't sleep," she said with a shrug. Went for a walk. The group exchanged worried looks, but no one pressed. Emily lay awake the rest of the night, replaying that smile in her mind. The next morning, the sun broke through the clouds, but the atmosphere in the cabin was thick with unspoken tension. Sarah hummed cheerfully while making breakfast, as if the previous night was forgotten. Emily watched her closely, noticing how Sarah's hands trembled slightly when she poured coffee, how her nails were caked with dirt. During their hike, Sarah lagged behind, stopping to pick up stones or leaves, murmuring to herself. Mia pulled Emily aside on the trail. "Something's wrong with her," Mia whispered. "She hasn't been the same since Europe." Emily nodded, relief flooding her that she wasn't alone in her suspicions. That afternoon, back at the cabin, while the others napped, Emily decided to snoop. Sarah's backpack was in the corner, unzipped just enough to tempt. Guilt gnawed at her, but curiosity and fear won. Inside, amid clothes and snacks, she found a journal. The pages were filled with Sarah's neat handwriting, at first notes on Paris cafes, London museums. But as the entries progressed, they devolved sketches of twisted figures, symbols that looked occult, repeated phrases like, "At calls from the dark," and "The vessel must be prepared." Emily's hands shook as she flipped to the last page, a list of names, their names. The Fab Five, each with a mark next to it checks by Jake, Mia, Chris. Next to Emily's, a question mark. A floorboard creaked. Emily shoved the journal back, heart in her throat, as Sarah entered the room, looking for something. Sarah asked, her tone light but eyes sharp. Emily stammered an excuse about borrowing a charger, but Sarah's gaze lingered, knowing. The rest of the weekend passed in a blur of forced normalcy, but Emily couldn't wait to leave. On the drive home, she confided in Chris, showing him photos she'd snapped of the journal pages on her phone. "We need to talk to her," Chris said, his face pale. "Find out what's going on." They confronted Sarah a week later at a coffee shop neutral ground. The five of them around a table, steam rising from mugs like ghosts. Jake led, gentle but firm. "Sar, we're worried. You've been acting strange." "What's up?" Sarah sipped her coffee, calm as ever. "Strange how?" Mia mentioned the trinkets, the whispers. Chris brought up the journal Emily had shared the photos with the group. Sarah's expression didn't change, but her knuckles whitened on her cup. "You went through my things." The accusation hung in the air. Then she laughed, that familiar sound now laced with something brittle. "It's just a story I'm writing. Fiction. You guys are paranoid." But Emily pressed. "The name's Sarah. Our names." Sarah leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Maybe it's not fiction. Maybe it's a warning." The group stared. "Europe changed me," she continued, eyes distant. "I visited this old castle in Transylvania, cliché, I know. But there was a room, hidden, with artifacts. I touched something I shouldn't have. A mirror, ancient, cracked. And in it I saw, not me, something else looking back." Jake scoffed, but Emily felt the air grow colder. "It's inside me now," Sarah said, her voice steady, whispering, "telling me things about all of you. Secrets you've kept." The confession spilled out, Jake's affair last year, Maya's shoplifting phase in college, Chris's hidden debt, things only they knew, private shames. "How did Sarah know? It sees everything," she murmured, "and it wants out." The group left shaken, promising to help, but doubt crept in. Was Sarah mentally ill, hallucinating, or was it real? Emily researched the castle Sarah mentioned, Bran Castle, tied to Vlad the Impaler legends. Online forums buzzed with tales of curses, possessions. One post chilled her, a traveler claiming to have seen a shadow entity in a mirror there, warning others not to look too long. Nights became torment for Emily. She'd hear knocks at her door, only to find no one. Texts from Sarah at odd hours. "It's hungry." The group tried intervening, suggesting therapy, even staging an intervention, but Sarah grew elusive, canceling plans, her apartment dark when they visited. Then, the disappearances started. First, Jake didn't show for a group dinner. His phone went to voicemail. Police found his car abandoned near the forest, keys in the ignition, no sign of struggle. Mia freaked, convinced it was connected. "Sarah," she whispered to Emily over the phone. She knew his secret. What if? Chris vanished next, after texting the group, meeting Sarah to talk. Be back soon. His body was found days later, in a ravine, ruled a suicide, but Emily knew better. Scratched into a tree nearby, symbols from Sarah's journal. Maya and Emily holed up together, doors locked, researching exorcisms, possessions. "We have to find her," Emily said, voice trembling. They tracked Sarah's phone to an old warehouse on the city's edge, abandoned and crumbling. The night they went was stormy, wind howling like banshees. Flashlights in hand, they crept inside, the air thick with dust and decay. Whispers echoed, or was it the wind? Deeper in, they found Sarah, sitting in a circle of candles, the mirror from her story propped against the wall. It was huge, frame ornate and blackened. Sarah looked up, eyes not her own pupils dilated to black voids. "You came," she said, voice layered, like multiple people speaking. Mia screamed as shadows detached from the walls, coiling like smoke. Emily lunged for the mirror, smashing it with a loose brick. Glass shattered, a howl ripping through the air. Sarah collapsed, convulsing. But as the shadows dissipated, Sarah whispered, it needed a new vessel. Emily felt a cold rush, like ice in her veins. Mia backed away, eyes wide. "Emily, your eyes." The twist hit Emily like a freight train, the secrets. The dreams, it wasn't Sarah. It had jumped to her when she followed into the forest, burrowed deep, waiting. Sarah had been trying to warn them, her story, a cry for help. Now, as police sirens wailed in the distance, Mia must have called Emily, felt the whisper inside, our turn. But wait, that's not the end. Emily survived barely. Therapy, meds, but the shadows linger. She swears the entity waits, patient, for the next friend to trust too much. So next time you look at your best friend, really look. What secrets are they hiding? Or worse, what's hiding in you?